Welcome to the Everybody Matters podcast, a show dedicated to the idea that when organizations care enough to show their people that who they are and what they do matter, they unlock the only business idea with truly unlimited potential. I'm Brent Stewart, your host. As always, this podcast is an outreach of Barry-Wehmiller. Don't forget to connect with us on the web at barry-wehmiller.com, on Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, on Facebook and LinkedIn, and check out our blog, trulyhumanleadership.com. We talk a lot on this podcast about how the language of business is broken, how common terms such as headcount, manager, human resources, and even employee contribute to a culture where people are treated as objects and are devalued. The everyday way we talk about things, our approach to or positioning of things, is important. I recently came across an article from Inc. magazine by Anese Cavanaugh, an author, writer, and speaker who is a regular contributor. The article is titled 7 Phrases That Will Make Your Day More Positive and Productive. And in it, Anese makes a great point about how our everyday casual thought processes can affect our speech and everyday life. In it, she says, the lens we look through has a huge impact on how we see the world, how we see people, our self-imposed or other imposed stress levels, how much energy and excitement we have for engaging, what we do, and ultimately the results we get. Language and framing is essential here, and bonus, they support each other. Because our language is such a contributor to creating a place where everybody feels like they matter, I and Barry-Wehmiller Global Messaging Leader Mary Rudder had a conversation on this topic with Anese, and found that her thinking aligns with much of what we talk about here at Barry-Wehmiller. The conversation begins with Anese introducing a concept she writes about in her book, Contagious Culture: Show Up, Set the Tone, and Intentionally Create an Organization That Thrives. The concept is called the IEP Method, which stands for Intentional Energetic Presence.
Intentional energetic presence is basically all about how you show up. It's how you show up in the world for other people, and it's also how you show up for yourself. So I break it down into two different ways of thinking about it. There's literally the intentional energetic presence, which is about me being intentional about what I bring into the room and what my energy is and how people are going to receive me. That's the intentional energetic presence piece. But if you break down those 3 words, you've got intention, which is all about how, what you want to have happen. You have energy, which is all about the energy you create to sustain yourself, how you take care of yourself, the food you eat, the energy you bring to the table. And then you have your presence, which is all about how you show up, how people experience you, being present in the moment, being present right now on this conversation that we're having, being present to what's happening in my organization, being present to what's happening to my life. So I look at all of it together, and it creates a really holistic way of looking at leadership and how do we create impact in the world. And of course, it always starts with us. So I believe that we set the tone, each of us individually. So I think that I could be in a negative workplace, right? I could be surrounded by a bunch of people who are really negative, low vibration, Debbie Downers, whatever you want to call it. And I still have power to shift that, or to do as much as I can to shift it by the way that I show up, the way that I think about things, the way that I engage with those people, the way that I, in IEP talk, the way that I hold my own space and my own field. I still have the power to either be a positive or a negative contribution to whatever's happening in that environment. And so, a lot of times people think with culture, I do a lot of work with companies on culture, culture change and culture shifting. And a lot of times I think it's going to be that they've got to, everybody in the company has to change. They've got to do all these big corporate initiatives. They've got to get more foosball tables. They've got to do, karaoke night or whatever. And all of that is awesome and great and really great things to add in. But really, when I'm working with people or having people go through our programs, we're pointing them to the fact that no matter what's happening in their organization, no matter what's happening in their family, with their friends, whatever, it actually starts with them. So we have the ability to look at what's happening around us and to decide how we want to interact with it. So when you say positive workforce or negative workforce, positive workforce to me means that everybody in the workforce is taking responsibility for how they show up, or they're at least aware and conscious of it, and that they're doing even the littlest things like these language tweaks I talked about in that article to start bringing themselves to what I think of as a higher vibration.
So give us an example of a language tweak for the audience.
Sure, absolutely. So, you hear all the time, this happened to me, or I have to do this, I have to do this. And actually, do you have to do it, or are you choosing to do it? So a language tweak, and this is really common in culture, and especially in organizations, like we have to do this, or I have to go to work today, or, I have to get home, I have to go work out. And actually, if you can take a break or take a pause and notice how that language feels in your body, have to is really constrictive. But if we switch it over to, I get to go to work today, I actually have a job. I want to, I choose to. Those are 3 different places to look that actually are a little bit more expansive and can bring us to a different way of looking at what we're about to engage in.
Yeah, language is important. I was thinking when you were just saying that about, I have to go to the gym, that's probably the phrase that I use every day.
Right. I get it. I get it. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you get to go, depending on what we choose to, depending on the frame we choose to hold, if I look at that, I get up and I train at 5:30 in the morning, and I'll do I've got to get up tomorrow at 4:50 or whatever. And also I'll go, well, actually, no, I get to get up at 4:50 to train at 5:30 because I have legs and I have a body that works. And like, wow, that's a really, that's a commitment I've made to myself. So it just shifts it just a little bit, where you've got it just puts you back in the place of author of your life versus being the victim to it.
Everybody, and that's what we can control. We can control what we do when we walk in a door every day, and we control our experience. But as a leader in an organization, how can you help facilitate that? How can you help encourage that?
Well, I think the first place is modeling it. I think that the first place I always have people look at themselves first when they're trying to help shift behavior around them. I ask them, how are they modeling the behavior they want to see? And that sounds really, really obvious, but it's a really important point to underline, because as a leader in the organization, if I want to start contributing to a more positive culture and better, more positive language and whatnot, it's my opportunity to start modeling that. So me being conscious of how I'm showing up is it's contagious. So it's going to actually have an impact on the people around me. They'll start to pick up on it. That's one. So modeling it. The other thing is, if you notice a lot of people around you in your organization or on your team or in your personal life, like wherever, and you notice they're complaining a lot, a really loving, gentle way to get underneath that is to go, okay, great, I hear your complaint. What would you like instead? And so you point them to what they want instead of the complaining. Because if you look at complaining language, oh, it's so hot in here, it's so hot in here, it's so hot in here, or whatever, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. If you look at complaining language, that's really low vibration, it's constrictive, it's not really compelling. But underneath every complaint is just an uncommunicated request. So if you as a leader can ask your people, like, okay, great, what would you like instead? All of a sudden, it opens them up to start looking at, oh, well, actually, I would love to have the air turned up. Oh, actually, I would love to leave a little bit early today, or whatever it might be. And so that's another way as a leader. And then I guess the another way I would think of is when you're noticing the kind of conversations going on and stuff is starting to go down the tube, how can you, as gently and caringly as possible, get curious about where they're coming from and also offer different frameworks, also offer a different perspective without making them wrong, So there's a way that you can take this too far, which looks like, this. You've got a team that's working together. Something really, really hard has just happened. The team is really sad. They're kind of in a sad and, maybe even a negative, like it's really, really hard. This really, really sucks space. And the leader on the team, trying to be positive and trying to shift it and use positive language, goes, oh, but look at the gifts, but look at this, and this is so great, and look at this happening. And that leader has a hard time being with the disappointment of the team. And what ends up happening is, because they're not meeting the team where they're at, they actually do more harm than good, because they're not validating that the team is in a really difficult space right now. So you can take this too far to the other direction too. Does that make sense?
Yes, it certainly does. I mean, it depends upon a foundation of empathetic listening. I mean, really
Absolutely.
Being willing to hear what the message behind the words, because you're right. when you complain, there's really, most of the time, there's something that can be done about it.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'd even add, I'll use myself with my team. If my company is going through a hard time, or we've just had to let somebody go, or whatever has happened, and my team is in, they're in a more like a lower space, a more difficult space. If I don't acknowledge that and make space for that, then then again, it's that empathetic listening. If I don't acknowledge it and make space for it, then I am invalidating what they're feeling, and I'm going to break trust and credibility with them. So there's a way that as that leader, I can say, hey guys, I know this is happening. How are you doing? Let's talk about it. And we can all put it on the table, and we can, really honestly process how, scared people are, or frustrated, or whatever. And then bringing them with me, we can start to look at, okay, what would we like to do next with this? So it really is taking people on the path with us. And I think that, one of the things we're talking about is there's two ways to frame out this languaging thing. One is just your general language as you go throughout your day. I have to go to the gym, or I get to go to the gym. I have to go to work, or I get to go to work. Or, my favorite one is I replace busy, I'm so busy, with I'm richly scheduled, or I'm on purpose. And that one personally serves me. So there's the moment-to-moment internal language, internal dialogue that's happening, and how we relate to what's happening in our lives. And then there's the how do we deal with that in an organization, especially with our team, when something's going on and we want to start to shift it to a more productive and positive way, but we also have to meet them where they're at if they're not in that space yet. I think in those cases where you feel like you really, really don't have a lot of choice, you want to look at what's the littlest thing you could do to shift your state so it feels a little bit better. What's the littlest thing you can do? So for example, if I'm working in a space and I'm working a ton and I'm feeling overwhelmed by all my work and I have to be there 15 hours a day for a while, what is that in service of? So if I can tap into, I'm working 15 hours a day right now because I'm putting food on the table for my family, and I'm really grateful I'm able to do that. Or I'm working 15 hours a day because we've got this huge project launch or something coming up, and it's really important because it's in service of the bigger vision of the company. If I can tap into the why, or if I can do the littlest thing possible, that the goal here is not to be inauthentic and fake it, but rather to find little spaces that give me a little bit, or find little things that will give me a little bit more space so I can breathe a little bit more easily. And then from there, I'll find different ways to actually make that situation feel even better.
And part of is the kind of the journey too. It's like when you go on a vacation and you have more fun driving to the place you're supposed to go to than the place that you're actually supposed to be at. Mm-hmm. And just the conscious thinking about changing your language to help change the way you think. If this is something that's intentional in your mind, and you think, I'm going to make an effort to change the way I talk about things, even the little things, even I have to make dinner, or I have to clean the bathroom, even the little things, it may be just more the conversation in your mind.
Yes.
Really, than anything else, than actually saying the right words.
Yes, I love it that you just said that. Yes, to me, this is an inside job. There's external language that's getting communicated, of course, but even more importantly is the inside job that's happening. And when I look at leadership, I think of leadership as about 70% is awareness. And so noticing how even how I'm talking to myself, am I being kind to myself? If I just made a mistake, and in my mind, I'm going, oh, Anese, I can't believe you just did that. Oh, I can't believe I messed that up again. And that's my internal dialogue. I'm going to be projecting that energy, right? I'm going to be projecting that out. People will feel it from me. They might not know what it is, but they're going to feel something. And the other thing is that I'm actually starting to shut down my resource state for me to figure out different ways to solve it. So my internal dialogue is, oh, I can't believe I just did that. If I can shift it to, oh, okay, wow, that didn't go the way I want it to. What can I learn from it? How would I do it differently? And even a step better, going, wow, I'm really happy that I tried that. I'm really too bad that it didn't work out. And I'm really happy. I'm proud of myself that I actually got out there and took a risk. So it's that internal language. There's the internal, there's external. So yesterday, it was my daughter's birthday yesterday, and we were at the pool, and we ordered a bunch of pizzas, and the pizzas came, and one of my friends said to me, oh, here's a piece of pizza. And I looked and I said, oh, this was my language. I go, oh, there's nothing on that I can eat. And he goes, no, there's nothing on that you choose to eat. And I was like, that is so true, and there's such a difference, because I don't do the gluten, and I don't do a lot of stuff that's on the pizza. That's a conscious choice. I'm not celiac. It's a conscious choice that I've made around not eating certain foods because I know that they don't serve my energy. They don't serve the way that I feel. And when I eat them, I'm actually more prone to being really negative. So, I've chosen that. But my language was, there's nothing on that I can eat. And it was almost said with a little bit of like a irritation, and he goes, no, you choose not to. And I went, you're totally right. Yeah. So it's little places like that.
But in addition to that little mindset change, it's actually a whole lifestyle change, really. I mean, you have to, because it takes the holistic you to be able to make this a sustainable part of who you are, I think. So you have to make sure that you are sleeping enough, and you have to make sure that you're getting exercise. I mean, don't all those things come into play?
I believe so, and I would do this. It's always looking at, anytime you hear yourself saying have to, you want to notice, does this feel good to me? So for example, do I have to get the sleep or do I want to get the sleep? Do I have to get my exercise in? Do I want to get my exercise in? And here's the thing. Some people might go, no, I actually have to. It feels fine in my body. It serves me. I'm good. Busy feels fine in my body. It serves me. I'm good. For that, I leave it alone. But you just want to notice individually. This is such a personal thing. Does the language you're using serve you? And I would start with sleep. Sleep's awesome. The more, and this is part of the IEP methodology, is there's a whole component there around self-care. There's an entire quadrant devoted to how much sleep are you getting? What is the food you're fueling yourself with? What does your environment look like? Because all of these things have an impact on how aware we can be. And that awareness is what points us to how our language is impacting us. It's like a Mobius strip. It all works so closely together. Yeah. The other thing I would add is that I think about language and awareness and shifting this, and it's like, do one thing at a time. Don't feel like you got to change everything overnight, because this is life's work. This is like a yoga practice or brushing your teeth. I think about all of this as it's something I'm going to do and be looking at for the rest of my life. It's never done, which I think is incredibly liberating. And it's just, as the more I do it, the more aware I start to become of how different things impact me. And it's not just language. It's that food. It's my office space. Is my office space an absolute catastrophe, so that every time I walk into my office, my heart sinks? It's the people I hang out with. Do the people that I hang out with, when my caller ID shows, George on the phone, does my heart sink? Or do I feel like really excited to talk to him? It's really starting to look at, how do the things around you impact your energetic field, and how are you contributing to that? And 95% of the time, actually I would probably say 98% of the time, I'm contributing to it in some way that's creating that in my life.
And in turn, we are part of a much bigger ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So when we shift the focus, the talk to workplaces, we're part of that ecosystem at a workplace. And so we contribute either positively or negatively to that ecosystem, to the environment of that ecosystem, mm-hmm. whether you're a leader or whether you're anybody else on the team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so all these pieces add up to something much bigger.
Absolutely. And what's fun about it is that the book that I wrote, it's called Contagious Culture, and the whole idea is it's bringing this content into your life in all these different ways, but it's really looking at how it doesn't take huge changes to do this. It's just little bits of awareness here and there that you start to notice, like, actually the way that I'm thinking about this, or the way that I'm looking at this person, or even my body language, is having an impact, and that impact now is contagious, and that's going to ripple to the next person, the next person, the next person. It doesn't matter if I'm the CEO or the janitor of the company. My presence has impact, and it is contagious. So with the IEP content and some of the stuff we're talking about, like the language and everything, it's looking at what is the littlest thing you can do at any moment, or on an ongoing basis as a practice, which then becomes a habit. What's the littlest thing you can do to really start to nourish yourself so that you can show up as positively and strongly as possible, so you become positively contagious, and then that infects the ecosystem we're talking about.
As you've worked with companies, as you've talked to leaders, as you've talked to people, have you encountered any maybe naysayers, or people who are just people that they think, oh, you know what, I'm just a cynical person. Mm-hmm. I talk the way I talk. I think the way I talk. Have you encountered anybody like that? And what do you say to people like that?
Oh, yes, I have. Absolutely. I love those people. I mean, I'm not inviting more of them. I'm not looking for more of them. But yes, Absolutely, definitely. I mean, I've had people flat out say to me, "Oh my gosh, I would never invest $1 in this. This is ridiculous. I throw phones at my people and they do what I want them to do." Like I've literally had that strong of a conversation with someone, and even the light naysayers where they say, "Well, I'm an authentic leader. I'm an authentic jerk, but I get the job done. My company's doing great." That might be their stance. So this is a choice. I'm not attached. So I hold a couple things for this. One, I'm not attached to convincing anybody to adopt this for themselves at all. It's a framework. It's a way of thinking about things I think is really useful. But it's so personal. It really is up to people, and sometimes they're not ready for it, and sometimes it's just not for them. So that's kind of my being and my mindset around it, which allows me to kind of be more flexible and not as, it's just easier to navigate that conversation. But the conversation part, what I'll say to them is there's 3 questions I have for them. One is, are you having the impact you want to have? So if they say, I'm going to lead the way I want to lead and I don't care about all this stuff and, blah, blah, blah. Great. Awesome. I'll leave you alone. And, curious, are you having the impact you want to have in your company? Are you guys getting the results you want? Are people responding to you the way that you want them to respond? Do they like working for you? So are you having the impact you want to have? That's number 1. Number 2 is, do you feel the way you want to feel? So as you go throughout your day, when you wake up in the morning, when you get home at night to your family, are you happy? Do you feel good? Like, do you feel the way you want to feel? And number 3 is, do your people follow you? And are they in relationship with you because they want to be or because they have to be? So you inspire them, you make them feel better, they're excited about you, they feel good around you, or you give them a paycheck so they have a job, so therefore you're their boss, and now they're following you because of that. And I find that those 3 questions are kind of magic, because if your answer is anything but like an absolute positive, yes, I'm having the impact I want, yes, I feel the way I want to feel, and yes, people follow me because they want to. If you're not hitting a yes all the way across the board, there's probably some value in some of this for you. And so what's the littlest thing you can do to start looking at how might you shift how you're showing up? And 99% of the time, it's the internal game.
Something else that you've written about recently is trust.
Mm.
Can we kind of dovetail the 2 of these subjects and talk about maybe how thinking differently could build trust?
The first thing that occurs to me when you say that is, I think that presence, like really good intentional presence, is one of the most important parts of building trust. I think that your ability as a leader to be present and to be open and curious, and to, see people as people. I think that this is one of the most important components, and just in your presence and how you show up, that helps to build trust. That's the first thing that I think of. I mean, I know the article you're talking about, and I actually gave people a framework of like, how do you build it? What do you do when it's broken down? And, just a couple of different examples. But if I pull myself even away from that article and just look at, how this applies and language and whatnot, it's your presence that is, having a huge impact on how people feel around you.
There was something else that I was thinking about with this too. Mm-hmm. And, it's not always it's not a Pollyanna way of dealing with things. Nope. It's not everything's rainbows and unicorns, right, and pink clouds.
Right.
So when you talk about an intentional presence, and especially in terms of building trust, it's being honest and being forthright. That's part of it as well.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't have to be negative. That's still positive interactions with people. When they get that forthrightness, that's a trust builder as well.
I totally agree with you. That's part of. I agree. That was the example I gave earlier on this conversation about the leader who goes in and the team's in a low space and they come in, they're like, oh, it's gonna be great. Look at all this, and they're breaking trust. The ability. None of this is about. I'm so glad you brought up the Pollyanna thing, because none of what I am offering here is about being inauthentic, faking it, being Pollyanna. Not being real. It's none of it's about that. It's noticing what's happening for you internally that's contributing to that, and then how are you showing up that either is going to serve and help to make it better, which making it better might be having that hard conversation. It's really honest, like, yeah, things are really hard right now. That's contributing. I can be really authentic and come in and go, yeah, this is really hard. We're in a really difficult space right now, or I'm having a really rough day, or whatever. I can do that and still be a positive contribution to that conversation.
And again, like you said, the Pollyanna aspect, even though you may feel that's positivity,
Mm-hmm.
I like what you said about that being a breach of trust,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, because I think that's when people think about being more positive or having a more positive environment, it's about ignoring the things that are going wrong,
Right.
ignoring the elephants in the room.
When I think about positive work environment, I don't think about everybody's running around and they're like bouncing off the walls and there's balloons and it just feels so good to be there. I think about it as it's a safe environment for people to be honest. I think about it as people are accountable for showing up and they're willing to keep coming back to the table to work through things. I think about it like the safety to share your truth and what's really happening, to have really honest, authentic conversation. That's a positive environment. I think a company, and I've seen this, companies going through a really, really challenging time. They've just had to lay people off or, whatever. That is one of the most challenging things for a company to go through. The morale can be low. It can be a really difficult time. You can still have a positive work environment in that difficult time, though, if especially the leaders of the company are showing up in a way that is real and it's in service of the organization, the people around them, And so I would just add that. And then the other piece I would add is when I talk about your energy and how you're showing up, a lot of times people will think, I'll often have people do a self-assessment. We'll say, okay, quality of the presence you're bringing into the room is 0 to 10. And a 0 is you're sinking in the room. It's miserable to have you in there. You walk in the room and people just go, oh my gosh, she's here, And a 10 is it feels so good to have you in the room. You don't even have to say a word. Your presence in that room is your gift. And so I'll have people do this energy check. And a lot of times the misunderstanding is they think that in order to be a 10 and to be positive contribution to their organization, they have to be bouncing off the walls and a cheerleader and like always Pollyanna and woo, the sky is great. And actually that's not it, because you can be that and you can be an absolute negative contribution to your organization. So when I look at positive energy and the vibration you're bringing in, the quality of your presence, I am literally looking at what is the quality of your presence? What is the quality of the presence you bring to the room? How do you feel to be around? And you have to be aware of what's happening in a room before you walk in. Because if I walk into a room and I'm in cheerleader mode and that room is low energy or is needing something different and I don't meet them where they're at, I've just broken trust. So it's important just to notice it's not about being a cheerleader or high or low or angry or happy or whatever. It's about the quality of the presence and you being in that moment and what you're bringing in so that people, the question is, are you a contributor to the quality of the room and the conversation, or are you a detractor? And you can be either one by the way you show up.
You can learn more about Anese and Contagious Culture at anesecavanaugh.com. That's ANESECAVANAUGH.com. You can also follow her on Twitter at Anese Cavanaugh. If you'd like to find out more about Bob Chapman and Ron Sizodia's book, Everybody Matters, The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family, go to everybodymattersbook.com. For updates on the book, this podcast, and we've got a lot of great content and insight. Don't forget to connect with us on the web at barry-wehmiller.com, on Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, on Facebook and LinkedIn, and check out our blog, trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, Everybody Matters is the only business idea with truly unlimited potential.